Hey guys, Jacqueline here with Zenith Home Loans for this week's TCA Tuesday, Total Cost Analysis Tuesday. And what I thought I would do today is just talk about the differences in different loan terms, because I get questions a lot about a 30-year versus a 15-year. There's actually a couple loans in between. So you can also do a 25-year and a 20-year. And in some cases, you can do shorter and longer terms than that. And you can even go down as far as a 10-year. And so what the biggest question that I get from clients is, okay, well, so what does that do to my payment? Well, I have a screenshot set up for you guys to take a look at that. So we're going to share my screen here. Hopefully I'll learn how to talk here in the next couple of minutes for you at the same time. So what I did, excuse me, is just set up to keep things consistent, just so that we're looking at as consistent of numbers as we can. A $550 purchase price, 20% down. And then I did a variation of interest rates on a 30-year fixed, a 20-year fixed, a 15-year fixed. And then I also threw in a 7-year ARM. So with the ARMs, like we've talked about in previous breakdowns, is it's based on a 30-year amortization of the loan. And then the rate's fixed for the first 7 years. And then after year 7, assuming we don't refinance or sell the property, that rate's going to adjust up or down depending on the market and kind of what's going on. So on the 30-year fixed today, 5.75% rate, that would make our monthly payment all in, so taxes and insurance, $29.67. And again, I did a 20% down loan option here. So there's no mortgage insurance, but we do have taxes and homeowners insurance. And that's going to be cash to close of 118. So you'll see across the board, 118,000. Those numbers aren't going to change. So that's the good news there. If we do the 20-year, the rate actually goes up for whatever reason to 5.875. Our payment goes from $29.67 to $35.20, but we pay that loan off faster. So now we pay it off in 20 years versus 30 years. Then if we do the 15-year option, that's when our rate drops. So the shorter the loan term, the better of a break the lender is going to give you on the interest rate. But a lot of times we don't really want to or can't afford that higher payment. So 4.875, but now our payment's $38.50. It's a little bit more in line with that 20-year option at the higher rate. But again, we're paying that loan balance off faster. What's nice about all of these loan terms is, let's say maybe you don't qualify at the 30-year loan, or maybe you're just not quite comfortable with that higher payment. There's no prepayment penalty on any of these loan products. So what you do have the option to do, which is something I really enjoy doing with my clients, and it's something that I'm going to show you after closing anyways, but making an extra principal payment to the loan. So you may have heard that if you add just an extra payment per year, that's going to shave off years off of the end of the loan. So you can do the same thing on a 30-year versus a 15-year. So maybe we only qualify at a $3,000 a month payment, but that 15-year payment's $38.50. So you can make the payment as though it were the 15-year option. You're going to pay it off in around the same amount of time. Obviously, the interest is going to be different, but you're still going to save because you're paying that principal balance down faster. Now, the other option we can go with is maybe a 7-year ARM makes more sense. So based on today's rates and kind of everything else that's going on in the market, a 30-year fixed is 5.75. But a 7-year ARM is 5.5. So we've got a 0.25% difference in rates. Now we've got that payment down a little bit more. We go from $29.67 to $28.98. So not a huge drop, but enough of a lower payment that it might make sense for us to do something like that. Because then if we added a little bit extra to the principal each month, maybe towards that 15-year, that's going to make a big difference. What's cool about this mortgage coach presentation and the TCAs, the total cost analysis as well, is going to show you the payment difference. So with the monthly payment difference, this $883, $330, it's basically comparing the lowest payment to the highest payment. So your difference in payment from the 15-year fixed to the 30-year fixed is $883. Your payment difference between the 7-year ARM and the 15-year fixed is $952. So to make it simple, you can make that extra principal payment to that 30-year term, and that's going to pay that balance down faster. Then it's going to show you savings over 60 months or 5 years. So you've got $28,000 in interest savings, which is huge, but maybe we can't afford that $3,800 a month payment. What's nice about doing 30-year or a longer term over a shorter term, depending on where you're at in your financial journey and homeownership journey, is you may have months where maybe you can't afford it, maybe you totally qualify for that higher payment. But if something comes up, or maybe you need to take a leave of absence, or something happens to a family member, or you just want to travel, or there's some home improvements or things like that, now you're not obligated at that higher payment. You can always make it as though it were the the higher payment, but you're only obligated and contracted to do that lower payment. So that's where it's nice to do these kinds of things, especially in a rising rate environment like we're seeing. And if we scroll down a little bit further, it shows you the interest paid over 15 years. So obviously on that 15-year term, we're going to have a lot lower of a payment. So what I want to show you is if we take this $2,800 payment and maybe we add an extra, we'll add this $952 in here. So I'm going to stop my screen share here for just a second so I can jump into my Wizard of Oz behind the curtain screen here for a second. And what I'm going to do is add in just that little bit extra, not a little bit, it's a lot. Add in the extra amount to that principal payment each month. So that way we can kind of see what that does over the life of the loan. So I'm just going to add in $952 towards the payment. And then I'm going to jump back into my shared screen so that you guys can see that. And voila, we've got the exact same payment, but at a lower rate. So now we've got the $3,850 like we would have on that 15-year. So we've added $952 to the reduction in payment. And so now we're going to pay that loan off instead of 30 years, which is how this one was set up. Now we're going to pay it off in 16.8 years. So we do still have another extra year in here, but the payment savings is now a lot more comparable to the 15-year. And it's lower still because of the shorter rate, but now I'm not obligated on that payment. So I have some flexibility. So the bottom line to know here is, yes, you can always do a shorter term. The big key things to know is, one, do we qualify at that shorter term? And two, do we really want to make that bigger of a payment? On these larger loan amounts that we're seeing, especially for the first time home buyers, and we're just getting in there with minimal amounts, a lot of times that higher payment's just not feasible, or it's just not comfortable. And so it's important to take a look at that. Yes, that is going to be a lower rate. And obviously we want a lower rate over the longer term, but not at the expense of not being able to live our day-to-day lives. So that's really the big thing to kind of take away from this today is, yes, we can always explore those shorter loan terms, and you can always make an extra payment to the principal as though it were a shorter term. You don't even have to make that big of a payment. You can make an extra $100 per month, and that's going to make a difference over the life of the loan. And then keep in mind too, the average lifespan of a mortgage loan is between 5 and 7 years. So in all likelihood, one, this may not be your forever home. And two, if it is, you're probably going to see some refinance opportunities within that timeline if you did end up staying in that house for 30 years. And even if you don't, if you're only going to stay in there for 5 to 10 years, you may still see a refinance opportunity, whether that be to get a lower rate if we do see rates start to come back down here in the future, maybe some debt consolidation like we've talked about a couple times on these calls, or if you've got mortgage insurance or you bought with a first and a second. There's a variety of reasons of why a refinance may make sense. So don't worry too much about making sure that you have the absolute perfect loan for 40 years from now today. The important thing is to make sure that based on your current timeline, based on your current financial plan and your projections of this home, what's the best financial loan for me to be in today, and know that we can still work around kind of what might make sense into the future and know, okay, I got some debt I want to pay off first, and then I'm going to start making extra payments to the principal. I said this before in these meetings. My recommendation is always get the payment where you're comfortable, and anything extra, instead of throwing it to the balance of the loan, make sure all of that high interest credit card that's paid off, any student loans that you still have are taken care of, that you're contributing to a 401k or other retirement plan. And once all of those things are taken care of, so we're taking care of our future, we're making sure our monthly payments and our cash flow today is in really good shape, then start making payments to the principal of the loan balance, because you've got to live somewhere. And so you might as well be taking advantage of the tax advantages of owning a home. You're not getting any tax advantages with high interest credit cards, probably not getting any tax advantages with student loans, especially if you haven't been making payments on them, if they're in forbearance because of COVID still. And you should absolutely have a retirement plan of some kind in place, whether it's contributing to a company-driven 401k, an IRA, or anything like that. If you need recommendations on financial advisors or anything like that, let me know. I have a bunch that I work with that are amazing. And if you just want to reevaluate kind of where your mortgage terms stand today based on what your loan terms are and everything like that, let me know. Let's review them. Let's take a look at an analysis. Let's make sure that you're in the right loan structure for what your goals are for the next 2 to 3 years, and just make sure we're in a good spot. I hope this was helpful information today. If you have any questions whatsoever, let me know. Feel free to share this information with anybody that you think might find it helpful, and I will see you next week.